Next guest is on a mission to eradicate self-doubt in 10 million women in the next 10 years through her teaching of self-confidence and speaking up. Here to tell us more about her mission is communication expert and confidence cultivator, Karen Laos. Karen, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Really excited to talk about all of the things when it comes to uplifting women, empowering them with their voice, which I know a lot of women, we need that in today's world. So awesome to dive into some of those tips. But before we get into that, you're a communication expert. You cultivate this really just presence, right? Of being outgoing and being confident. But when did that first get started, Karen?
Well, there was a moment when I was in a boardroom where I was tongue-tied. And this was a very unusual thing for me because I was already in a career where I was on stages all over the world at Google and Facebook and a variety of places. But I was stuck where I had this internal conflict with something that my boss had asked me to present. And I couldn't get the words out. She actually had to shut down the meeting. She pulled me aside. I was mortified, pulls me aside and said, Karen, once again, you didn't trust your gut. You've got to trust yourself. You could have just said, hey, I'm not exactly sure why we were doing this meeting in the first place. Let's table it and move on. But that permission hit me like, what? I could actually do that and say that? And that's when I set out on a course to figure out why I am holding back at certain situations or in certain situations where this doubt and the fear of judgment of others and trying to please everybody all the time was plaguing me. Oh my goodness. And that's when I set out on my personal growth journey to figure it out. And once I did, I felt so free. And I said, oh my gosh, I want to help more women feel free. Because at the end of the day, it's about feeling free to be your authentic self and not hold back any longer. So I'm done holding back. And I want all women to feel the same way.
That's so amazing and truly inspiring. And from that, 10 in 10 was born. So give our viewers overall, what is 10 in 10?
Yes. 10 in 10 is that I am on a mission to eradicate self-doubt in 10 million women in 10 years, specifically to help them speak up. So my goal is to reach all these women and, frankly, any gender to have the tips so that they are speaking up, standing out, and being free to be themselves in the world. So what this could look like very specifically, because that's a big mission, it sounds wonderful, but what does that actually mean? That means you are sitting in a meeting and you're holding back, but you decide, no, I'm not going to hold back any longer. I'm going to speak up. And so one of my tips, for example, is to say, here's my vote. Starting with that. So looking at what is one thing that you can do differently to speak up and overcome that self-doubt. And I have lots of exercises for that.
That's so amazing. Well, let's get into some of the tips because I know a lot of our viewers are probably just sitting on the edge of their seat right now. Do you have a couple of tips right off the top of your head that will be helpful to people that they can start using today? Right
now, yes. One of my favorites is one I like to call the Broadway musical technique. And this is first, take your strongest message of doubt. For a lot of us, particularly as women, it's I'm not good enough. So we'll use that as an example. And even when I say that, you can feel how heavy it is. You take that same message of doubt and you sing it like a Broadway musical. So imagine if I were saying, I'm not good enough. Suddenly you go, wait, what? Suddenly you're like, laughing. What? I know, and it seems ridiculous now. And not to say that the message itself and how you feel is not ridiculous. I'm not dismissing any of that. But it changes up the neural pathways in our brains, and it takes the power away.
Wow.
So that is one thing you can do right away, and it's a great tip to use right before you're walking into some important thing, even in a personal relationship, whatever situation you might be feeling held back, try that technique. Because it works.
I love that. That is an awesome tip. I'm going to have to use that one of these days. And when I do, I'm going to give you a shout out. But something awesome, they can also find a lot of your tips in your book. It's called Trust Your Own Voice. I'm going to hold this up for our viewers so they can really get a good look about this. But tell us what's in the book, what people can expect when they open the pages, Karen.
Yeah, I'll give another example because the book is one that I like to say I would read. I have to admit, I'm not a big reader, but I love Cliff Notes. I love give me the tips, no more fluff, just tell me what I need to do.
Exactly.
So it's the whole thing is a guidebook on confident communication. And one of the tips is how to stop rambling and get to the point. So I will share one of those tips, that tip now. And it's when you notice yourself rambling or going off on a tangent, stop, pause, and say out loud, my point is this. And that will not only help you focus, but it will help the people listening to you realize, oh, she has a point. She is going somewhere. And that's one of the many tips that I have in there. But it's things like how to use your voice from a mechanic's perspective, where to breathe in your diaphragm to project that voice. And one of the biggest tips that I would recommend avoiding is the slang term upspeak, where we say a statement as if it's a question. So for example, many people introduce themselves and they say it like this. Hi, I'm Karen Laos, and I'm originally from Minneapolis, but now I live in San Francisco. Versus, hi, I'm Karen Laos. I'm originally from Minneapolis, but now I live in San Francisco.
Big difference. You could hear the difference even just by you saying that out loud.
And all I'm doing is punctuating. That's what I think is so fascinating about it. Somehow in the spoken word, we have forgotten that punctuation exists. Whereas, you know, we write an email and that kind of thing. You don't think twice about putting in a period and a comma.
Well, these are just so amazing, and I know people can also get your book, but we thank you for joining us here on the sofa and sharing your mission 10 in 10. Thank you so much, Karen.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.